Leave your comments on the Ask Reddit sub, and I'll read your answers on the next episode of LWIAR. What was the most petty thing an adult did to you when you were younger? Douchebag parents have douchebag spawns. I don't. I ran out of the room crying, lol. One of my packs had to make a rule that only the parents of the scout could touch their car because stuff like this was happening way too often. The Pinewood Derby and the other racing events were meant to build sportsmanship, yet some parents take it way overboard. There's a movie making fun of exactly this called Down and Derby. Yes, same with my son's Cub Scout pack. Only the parent of the scout and the one person checking to see if the cars were qualified, weight, etc., could touch the cars. If this was not followed, the offending party was immediately disqualified. When I expressed my shock at this to my husband because all the families currently involved with Scouts are awesome, he said it was due to huge problems in the past that nearly escalated into fisticuffs that these rules were put in place. So, the problem was the parents, not the kids. As usual. Sigh. Man, I'm noticing a trend with all the Timmy lines. Does he ever not die? I was feeling sick one day in grade 3 or 4 and the substitute teacher wouldn't let me go to the nurse's office because I didn't look sick enough. I had strep throat. I broke my ankle at school. The nurse said I was fine and was just making it up. I have a ridiculously high pain threshold, so I wasn't bawling my eyes out. I was on crutches for I think nearly a month. Same thing happened again when I literally broke my neck years later. School was honestly the worst time of my life. Drove me to try suicide twice. I leapt off a second-story balcony but landed in the wood chip garden mulch, so I was badly bruised and dislocated one of my knees but was otherwise fairly unscathed. I was given detention for showing off and walking on the garden. Sounds like they just didn't want you there and were trying to come up with an excuse to send you home. If they were that hesitant to let them watch a really tame Disney movie, they probably saw her as an unknown, outside evil. Usually parents like that are kinda paranoid about any kind of content not from or approved by their church. So to have a kid over who thinks that kind of movie is normal and understands the jokes is probably terrifying. They probably thought it was Satan causing the laugh and the cough. She couldn't be saved by God. Wild guess. Catholic. Private school. Eventually homeschooled. They were probably scared of the movie. It's futuristic. Then you have a kid from what sounds like a normal background in the mix, laughing at it because she understands the jokes. Satan has possessed her. God can't save her. Take her home lest Satan get to their kid. 2. I had the opposite happen to me. Was about 10 and riding in the car with my mom while driving down a road that paralleled the beach. I spotted what looked like money in the road, blowing around in the wind. So Mom stopped and I found 2 $100 bills. Mom sent me down the path to the beach to see if I could who it might belong to, and there were a couple of guys walking down with fishing gear. I ask if they were missing any money and one guy reaches into his back pocket and pulls out some cash, counts it and says, yeah, he's missing about $500. So I give him the cash I found and he says, I'll split with you however much you find. I went back and looked all over and found one more bill and brought it to him. He gave me $150. Opposite for me too. As a child I found a £20 note on the street. There was a grown-up ahead. So I ran to him and reached out asking if it was his. He said no, and to not ask any more grown-ups because they'd just take it. I bought many sweets that day. Cool guy. It's yours now, kid. Put it in your pocket before anyone else notices, she says. Thinking back to that little fricker on the rollerblades she ripped off all those years ago. And that's why I always just pocket money like a thieving little snake. My mom asked if I wanted to play 52 card pickup. While my friends were over, I asked her what it was and she said I either want to play or I don't. I told her I didn't want to play anything if I didn't know what it was. She got visibly irritated and threw the cards on the ground and said this is 52 card pickup. Pick them up. She then threatened to ground me as she watched me pick the cards up and put them away nicely. I think it was worse because my friends were watching. Edit. Thanks for all the awards and comments. A lot of people are talking about how abusive my mom sounds and it led to interesting discussions. with my husband today. He agrees that my mom was abusive and feels she was way worse than his dad. I think his dad was worse. Admittedly, my family and neighborhood set the bar low on good parenting. Most of my uncles and both of my grandmas were physically abusive. I have cousins that were raped by their own brothers and made to repent as young children for their hand in their own sexual assault. Great job, Mormons. And other cousins who weren't allowed to finish high school. We took in a lot of cousins. My parents also made it very clear who in the family wasn't safe, wasn't to be trusted or listened to, and which uncles could use a solid kick to the dick before I ever give them a hug. My neighborhood has gangs and drive-by shootings and drug dealers and girls selling themselves in junior high. My mom parented by fear the whole neighborhood equally. I don't care if you're the leader of the mafia. My mom will scream in your face. Try her. Nobody shot a gun at our house during drive-bys and no one gave her babies drugs. I literally believed marijuana was barbecue because my whole neighborhood successfully lied to me. But that's another story. I'm 1000% positive the whole neighborhood didn't want to be on her bad side. But I think they all wanted to be on her good side too. We've got neighbors that randomly show up to chat with her, instead of going to their drug dealer next door and buying drugs. She'll be an ear and keep them strong and clean. So when I say she wasn't perfect, you all know what I mean. But when I say she did a lot of good, I hope you know what I mean too. This hits home a bit. She wasn't the worst mom by a long shot. In a lot of ways she was a great mom. But she certainly parented by control and fear. There really was no choice to not play and not pick up the cards, and we don't have a great relationship to this day. Not the worst mom equals a good mom. But I do get what you mean. My dad was and still is just like how you described your mother, but I still make an effort to stay in touch and on good terms. I'll just quietly resent him till the day he dies, knowing I was a bigger man by the end. We were required to cover our books too, but the teachers who were strict about it made us do it in class. Like literally the day we are handed the book, the teacher got out a big stack of paper bags and we'd spend 10 minutes all making book covers. I like this. They feel strongly about enforcing things and then supply the resources and guidance needed so that everyone can be successful. I wish more people were like this. I literally had a textbook in grade school. I'm college age now. That put the civil rights movement in the current events section in the end. Are some people just not capable of introspection or self-analysis? How do you behave like your dad and not ever stop and go, "What the frick am I doing?" Quote. What were they expecting you to do? Stare holes into space-time continuum? If only I knew. Even my older sister, by a year, came out of her room to ask that same question at the time. LMFAO. My great-grandfather's sister was my elementary school lunchroom lady. I got in trouble a few times for calling her Aunt Sarah instead of Mrs. Blank. Hadn't thought about that in years. Thank you for triggering that memory. Edit. It was my second grade teacher who had issues, not Aunt Sarah. Sarah was a special lady. Edit number 2. Thank you for the shiny things. Oh, shiny. Lesson 3. I got in trouble in 6th grade for reading during homeroom. Homeroom was like a random 30 minutes period to work on homework, but I always did my homework the night before, so I would just quietly read. For some reason, my homeroom teacher hated it. One day she just yelled at me for always reading in her class and told me to do my homework. I told her all of my homework was done. She told me to prove it, so I showed her all of my completed homework. Then she confiscated my book and sent me to the principal's office for being disrespectful. I'm still salty about it. What pisses me off the most about it is that it extends beyond the teacher's power trip. 2. By teaching their students that proving someone wrong is disrespectful, they also teach them that all disagreement is bad and must be stamped out. Then updated facts, and also innocuous differences in opinion, are seen as rude and shameful. Freak that crap. It seems incredibly stupid, especially for elementary school. I could see this maybe being a thing in high school where kids like to skip class. But no kid in kindergarten has the ability to choose if they're going to class or not on any given day. Good thing she was only cold to you, but stayed away then. Growing up, my mom's sister absolutely hated me and got her dad to treat me poorly. 2. I learned the reason for her behavior and why that side of the family treated me so horribly. My mom got pregnant with me and I was gonna be born the same year as her sister's kid, and she was mad that my mom and I were stealing their spotlight. Edit. I would just like to add I was my mom's second kid. And the first kid was named after my mom's sister. Which is so dumb because having a similar-aged cousin is awesome. Man, that's not just BS, that's dangerous. On the wedding day of my mom's third wedding, I sat in my room alone crying cause it was hard. But I made sure to remove myself cause I didn't want to upset my mom. When my aunt came to check in on me and saw I was crying, she went and told my mom. My mom went out of her way to stop hair and makeup to come into my room for being selfish and trying to ruin her happy day, even though I purposefully tried to not look upset in front of her in the first place. Edit. Oh wow guys, I took a nap and wake up and I've gotten my first awards and this is my top comment ever. Thank you so much. To address some of the questions that have come up. Yes, she is still married to her third husband and I'm grateful for it now because he ended up being great for her even though he had quite the rocky start with me. My mom also finally went to therapy after I had already grown and left the house and was diagnosed properly and given the help she needs, and we now have a solid relationship and she still regularly apologizes for the things she did growing up, while still have some childhood baggage. I built a very happy life for myself and will definitely use what I learned from my childhood to be a better mom to my kids if I ever have any. Thanks Yal. Thankfully she's changed a lot the past couple years after getting a lot of help that she needed. And I've got my own life where I'm happy and don't have to deal with that kind of stuff anymore. That's not petty, that's freaking dangerous. One of my uncles was in a years-long fight with my mom. To stir trouble, anytime he greeted my sister and I, he would tell my sister how beautiful and wonderful she is and to me just say, "Oh, you're here too," and then promptly ignore me the rest of the night. I used to adore him up to that point, so this ended up in me being extremely hurt and crying to my mom for hours about how I'm ugly and not special. He got his petty vengeance on my mother and crushed my self-esteem. Till today I don't forgive him for it. My parents were weary of other PPL and would never do something as reprimand someone else's child. They'd rather openly shout at us, even when we were not at fault. Later they'd explain that you have no authority over others and should look only at your own. I found it really unfair as a child, but ultimately made me a better person. Edit. Thanks for clearing up my grammar. I know it's wary now. My grade 2 science teacher taught us that there is no food we eat that doesn't come from plants. He gave the example of a cow. It eats grass, so it comes from plants. He offered $5 to anyone who could find anything that people eat that didn't come from plants and said no one had ever claimed it. We all went home and thought about it. Kids were saying things like marshmallows, ice cream, candy. I put my hand up and answered, salt. He was quiet for a moment and admitted that I was correct. And no one had ever thought about that before, not even him, and that millions of people around the world eat salt every day. But he refused to give me the $5. Edit. To stop it, but mushrooms. But algae. Comments. An organism that feeds on decayed organic matter, or on the waste products of other organisms that feed on decayed organic matter, would still fall under the umbrella of, without plants, they wouldn't have anything to eat, rule he had set up. I didn't know about the algae, and didn't consider it a food when I was in grade 2. But I had actually thought about mushrooms, and a kid had suggested them. But I knew that even mushrooms wouldn't have food if plants didn't exist. I could have mentioned any mineral, but I mentioned only the one we regularly ate. The lesson was on the food chain, and how important plants were to our survival. That we would have nothing at all to eat if they didn't exist, you know, other than salt. Answer was genius. Teacher was dumbfounded, still didn't give the money. What a jerk. Nah, he did have it, was just salty. A kid outsmarted him. That whole side of the family is like this. There's way more stories, but I don't want to give myself away. Thanks for watching LWIAR. The best of recent r/AskReddit submissions and comments. If you like this video, check out LWIAR too, and don't forget to like and subscribe.